They're doing it again, people. They are admitting they lied
while pretending they never lied.
Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned rumbler, and my goodness, people, they're doing it again, and this time it's actually Time magazine doing it again. They're admitting they lied while pretending they never lied, while making you think you're going crazy for having thought that they lied in the first place. What? This time around, it relates to the no link, no effect between the COVID jibby jab and a woman's menstrual cycle, because you'll all recall that at the beginning of the pandemic, they were assuring us that there was no connection between the COVID jibby jab and interfering with a woman's menstrual cycle. It was fact-check, people. You were a crazy anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist if you thought there was. But let's not forget about the last time Time magazine did this time with the 2020 elections, in which there was no chicanery whatsoever. It wasn't rigged, it was just fortified. Time, Politics, 2020 election, the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. And my personal favorite passage, that's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it, and they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures. They were not rigging the election, you crazy conspiracy theorists, when they changed the rules, changed the laws, controlled the flow of information. The cabal was not rigging the election, they were fortifying it, and if you thought they were rigging it, you're an idiot.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
And this time around, also courtesy of Time, is just a slight minor admission that, yeah, where once upon a time we denied any link between the COVID jibby jab and interfering with a woman's menstrual cycle, yeah, there might be something of a connection, but don't worry, it's not a strong connection. But just first to refresh everybody's memories, because I'm old enough to remember back in the day when they told anybody who thought there might have been a concern about the impact of the jab on a woman's menstrual cycle, they were called conspiracy theorists. I'm old enough to remember, but just to refresh your memory, here's an article from The Guardian. The Guardian, quote, no data, end quote, linking COVID vaccines to menstrual changes, U.S. experts say. Some have reported changes amid vaccine rollout, but experts say, quote, one unusual period is no cause for alarm, end quote. But wait, it gets better. Let's just hear what the experts at the time had to say. Quote, so far there's no data linking the vaccines to changes in menstruation, end quote, Alice Lou Culligan and Dr. Randy Hutter Epstein at Yale School of Medicine wrote in the New York Times. Quote, even if there is a connection, one unusual period is no cause for alarm, end quote.
You are fake news.
Fast forward 2 years, and what is the latest news of the day from the so-called experts? Time. COVID-19 vaccines aren't strongly linked to menstrual changes, study says. And before we get started, let me just say that the headline is a lie. The headline is an overt lie that is contradicted by the content of the article itself. COVID-19 vaccines aren't strongly linked to menstrual changes, study says. And further on into the article, the strongest association was among postmenopausal women. The vaccines aren't strongly linked to changes in menstrual cycle, but they're most strongly linked among a certain demographic.
I know what you're doing right now, and I don't like it.
And not to spoil the punchline before we get there, but I'm going to do it anyhow, Time is conveniently confounding strongly linked with linked to strong adverse reaction, and here's why. That analysis found no strong association between COVID-19 vaccines and changes in menstruation, or at least bleeding events that were severe enough for women to seek medical care. And so what you see here is Time magazine asserting that there is no strong link between the jibby jab and certain interference with menstrual cycles, or at least as they're defining it, serious enough
to warrant medical attention.
It's a subtle but very important distinction, because Time magazine is saying it's not strongly linked to interference with menstrual cycles, so long as those interference with menstrual cycles were not sufficiently serious to warrant medical care. What they are basically implicitly stating is that there is a strong connection to interference, but not serious interference. But if you can believe it, the outright lie of the headline contradicted by the body of the article is not the worst thing about this article. The subtle distinction that they are making or confounding between strongly linked to and linked to strong reactions is not the worst thing in this article. The worst thing about this article is in the first paragraph, when they basically unequivocally admit to testing on humans in real time. By Alice Park, May 4, 2023. While the COVID-19 vaccines have made a dramatic difference in controlling the pandemic, researchers are still learning about the ways that the shots may affect people's health. I'm sorry, could you repeat that time? I think you just told me that in May of 2023, researchers were still trying to determine the impacts that the shot might have on people's health. I thought you've been telling me for the last 2+ years that they were safe and effective. Now, even if they were not effective, I wouldn't care so much, but you've been telling me they're safe, and 2 years later, you're now telling me that researchers are still trying to find out what impact this is having on the human body?
And yet, despite the fact that we've now essentially clinically tested the vaccine on billions of people worldwide.
To the untrained mind, it might seem like what you are asserting right now is the antithesis to safe and effective if you are only now 2 years in, still researching the impact that this may have when you've been telling us for the last 2 years it was safe. One of those questions centers around how the vaccines might impact menstrual cycles. Reports of women experiencing changes in their cycles, either in the intensity and frequency of bleeding or the length of their periods, have prompted more rigorous investigations of how COVID-19 vaccines may be affecting cycles. Yeah, these are things you should have known 2+ years ago before telling everyone they were safe and effective. In the latest study published in the BMJ, researchers led by Richard Jung, professor of epidemiology and physician specialist at the Swedish Medical Products Agency, the country's equivalent of the US Food and Drug Administration, looked at medical records from nearly 3 million Swedish women ages 12 to 74. The analysis found no strong association between COVID-19 vaccines and changes in menstruation, or at least bleeding events that were severe enough for women to seek medical care. Now, I admit that I am no epidemiologist. I am just a lowly lawyer with a mild understanding of the English language, but my goodness, that seems like one heck of a distinction to be making. No strong link to anything serious at least warranting medical care for bleeding. Is there a strong link to anything less serious than that? Asking questions that I suspect I already know the answers to. The strongest association was among postmenopausal women. After a third dose, the booster, of either mRNA vaccine made by Moderna or Pfizer-BioNTech, women had a 28% increased risk of bleeding in the first week after vaccination and about a 25% increased risk of bleeding throughout the next 3 months compared to before their vaccination. And saving the best for last, the kick in the teeth, the salt on the wounds, the insult to injury, the article concludes with the following for anybody who has bothered to read all the way through to the end. Still, doctors don't fully understand why immunization against COVID-19 could affect menstrual cycles, so more research is needed to appreciate how developing immunity against SARS-CoV-2 affects health. I don't want to get too hyperbolic, but there are some out there who might say that in their humble opinion, this is bordering on the criminal. There are some out there who might say that this is Nuremberg-level criminality. Nuremberg-level atrocities. Read this Time article and understand what they are telling you. 1. The headline is a lie. 2. They are admitting to real-time experimentation on humans. 3. They are confounding strongly linked to strong events. IMHO, this is criminal. Researchers are still learning that, minor detail of how the shots might impact people's health. Doctors don't fully understand why the jab might interfere with women's menstrual cycles. Well, in fairness, Obama did publicly and proudly admit to, clinically testing
On billions of people worldwide.
And in fairness, they now have also publicly admitted to having never tested against transmission in the first place.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunization before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
But doctors don't fully understand why the jab might interfere with women's menstrual cycles. More research is needed. Do they even know if it only interferes with menstrual cycles? Because once you're in that general region, do they definitively know that it doesn't interfere with other things like reproductive cycles?
No.
More research is needed. Shut your filthy mouths, you dirty anti-vaxxers. Take the jab for the greater good, and don't say we didn't tell you because we wrote articles like this telling you that we didn't know what we were saying when we told you it was safe and effective. Some might call this moving at the speed of science. Others might call this Nuremberg-level atrocities. Up for you to decide. And if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below. If you want to support what I do, you can go to
vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
become a member of the community, become a supporter where you get tons of exclusive stuff. But more important than any of that, check in on your friends and family. Make sure everyone around you is doing well. And now you know your vlog. Peace out.